Welcome back to Fannibal Kitchen. Today's recipe out of the Feeding Hannibal cookbook is supposed to be the Lung and Loin in wine sauce recipe, but there's a slight modification I'm gonna make, which I'll get to later. First, I wanted to say that I hope everyone's holidays are going well. Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, New Year's, you name it. Speaking of the new year, I want to bring you even more recipes, and I've got some fun new ideas for this show. I'm excited about it, and I hope you're as excited as I am. We're going to move on to today's recipe. It's around the 29-minute and 30-second mark that we start to see Hannibal prepping for this very recipe. You can't see what he's working on at first because the camera's approaching from behind, and then when you finally do get to see what he's doing, he's pressing the air out of the lungs. But the lungs are where the trouble starts for me in preparing this recipe. I can't buy lungs, at least not for human consumption. Why? Because there's been a ban on selling offal in the United States since about the 1970s. Offal is defined as the entrails and internal organs of animals that are used for human consumption. Lungs, referred to as a piece of offal, have so many different passages in them that if they get contaminated during the butchering process, there's no way to guarantee that they'll be clean enough for human consumption. And once contaminated, it's just a breeding ground for all kinds of bad things, hence the ban. Some people go as far as driving to Canada and bringing lung back across the border, or trying to ship it home and disguise it as other things, and some of those packages make it through. The other option would be to go, get a license and hunt a wild animal, and in the butchering process, harvest the lungs. However, I'm not willing to do either of those two things. Thankfully, the Feeding Hannibal cookbook does give us an alternative. If you are unable to obtain lung, which is my case being the United States, I can merely double the amount of beef tenderloin. That I can do. So if lungs are banned for human consumption in the US, how was it that they were able to obtain lung for the show to cook with this recipe? It's not banned in Canada, and we know that the show was filmed in Toronto. Going back to Janice's food blog, she outlines the hoops and hurdles that she had to jump through just to get lung for this episode. From her blog, she states, "Anyway, I had made the 100 phone calls, signed the mile-long paperwork in triplicate, shown my ID, given my firstborn, and was here for my hot lung." Hot is what they call it when it is fresh off the kill floor. I did the crossword with the guard while I waited for it to chill to regulation temperature. I love that she included the detail of killing time with the guard doing the crossword. That's great. So now we've covered why I can't get lung, and we covered how the show was able to get lung. Me, truth be told, I'm a little disappointed that I can't recreate the recipe exactly as it's listed in the book. And on the other hand, I'm also kind of relieved. I don't know how I would do cutting it up. I certainly don't know how I would do eating it, but I'd try it. But wait a second. I think we forgot to ask a very important question. Whose lungs are those? Supposedly in the script is an unshot scene where Hannibal goes looking for the Minnesota Shrike. He comes across a young girl who bums a cigarette off of him and rudely blows the smoke in his face. And that was motive enough for him to kill her, and that's whose lungs are on the table. The joke being that as Hannibal's preparing them, they're already pre-smoked for his consumption. And now on to the recipe. I have all of my ingredients together, and some of them I've already prepped. You'll need butter, garlic, flour, red wine, beef stock, salt and pepper for taste, olive oil, veal lungs, beef tenderloin. If no veal lungs are available, then double the amount of tenderloin, portobello mushrooms, baby red onions, baby carrots. The Feeding Hannibal cookbook, which if you haven't gotten a copy, I highly recommend that you do, gives instructions on how to make your own soup stocks. So in true Hannibal fashion, I made beef stock for the first time from scratch using the directions in this cookbook. Here's some of the footage that I filmed earlier today prepping the beef stock. Here are the beautiful beef short ribs that are going to go in the pot as part of our stock. I also picked up beef tenderloin. This is what we're going to cube. The other part that I'm going to throw into the pot with the short ribs are knee bones. However, both of these I'm going to brown first in the oven. The oven's already preheated to 400 degrees, and we're going to put them in for about 40 to 45 minutes and let them get nice and brown before putting them in the pot to simmer. With the beef broth done and on standby, we're gonna saute some butter and garlic as the first steps. Now I've already got some mashed potatoes made on the side, and I've got my water for some veggies that I'm gonna parboil, and my main saucepan in the middle. The recipe makes 4 main course servings, but since it's just the 2 of us, my fiance and I'm gonna cut everything in half. Got some butter that's been sitting out. It's now at room temperature. Add minced garlic to that. I'm gonna saute until it's a light golden brown, and then it's time to add in the flour. We're just gonna keep on stirring until everything gets to a nice golden brown color. We're gonna add the flour in. Do the same thing. Mix. Let it all turn golden. There we go. And here's the beef stock that I've been making. In it goes. We're just gonna keep stirring until it reduces. Between the last recipe and this recipe, we get introduced to new characters like Franklin and the man himself, Hannibal Lecter. It takes 22 minutes into the first episode before we see him in the pilot, and he's the titular character. So some people love Franklin, some people hate him. I'm not a huge fan because he's just trying too hard, and I know that's how he's written, so it's a great job to Daniel Fogler, the actor that plays Franklin. You may recognize Franklin from the Fantastic Beasts movies, and speaking of the Fantastic Beasts movies, Mads Mikkelsen is now going to be taking over as Grindelwald, so I'm looking forward to seeing him in that role. Alright, so that has started to thicken up a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step and remove it from heat. We're going to add our olive oil in there. We're going to cook the beef tenderloin next, which has already been cubed. I sprung for some really nice cuts because I'm filming this on New Year's Eve. So this is mine and my fiance's New Year's Eve dinner. And this is how we're gonna ring in 2021. Okay, here goes the beef tenderloin. It's been seasoned with salt and pepper already. So here we go. Just supposed to cook until medium rare. I'm sure real people who know how to cook are yelling at me right now using utensils I'm probably not supposed to be. It's a learning process. Constantly turning these. Alright, let's see how this goes. Alright, trust me, the meat thermometer just hit 140, which is what we want according to the thermometer for rare, medium rare. Get this out of here for now. Turn that off and I'll remove this from heat. Alright, and the trend that I'm noticing with these recipes so far is to make sure that you wipe your pan kind of in between those ingredients. So we're going to clean this up and get right back to it. So the meat is done cooking for the moment. Now this is typically where we would start cooking the lungs. However, we already mentioned that we're going to be using twice the amount of tenderloin instead of lungs. So we're going to move on to the portobello mushrooms. We just want to get these a little toasty. Not too much. So they're starting to release water, which is where we want to kind of put the pause button on these. Set these aside for now. So I'm going to bring this over here instead so we're nice and center stage. We're going to add in our baby red onions, which I had a hard time finding, but I ended up using pearl onions, which came in multiple colors. You can see them here in the boxes. I bought them at the grocery store. I had luck getting them at Vaughn's, so I just picked out the red ones. Now we're gonna throw in our carrots. We set the timer for 5 minutes. And there we have it. Parboiling's done. All right, we are gonna add these straight into our wine sauce for continued cooking. And now we're gonna bring this to a boil. I was supposed to bring this to a boil first and then throw those things in. We're just gonna roll with it. So our veggies are tender. We're gonna put in the tenderloin that we previously cooked, as well as the portobello mushrooms. I'm gonna cover that all. And we're really just going to make sure that everything gets heated back up again. I'm not really trying to cook any of these ingredients anymore. The cookbook recommends that you serve the meat alongside either herbed rice, noodles, or buttery mashed potatoes. You had me at buttery mashed potatoes. That's what I opted for. That's what you've been seeing in the frame here. So these I made from scratch using a recipe I found. I'll try to post the recipe in the description below if you want to follow along and make the same ones that I made. I did make a couple of adjustments just because for some reason on New Year's Eve, everybody and their mother was looking for whole milk, so I chose something different. I'll include that in the description for the video if you want to follow along and make it the way that I did. I'm really excited to plate this food. I can't tell you how excited I am because I bought a place setting in the same exact style that's used in the show. It's the one with the silver trim all the way around, came with the teacup and some extra plates. I did film an unboxing video for this place setting, which I'll put up on my channel if you're interested in seeing that. Here we have our double tenderloin, no lung, in wine sauce recipe out of the Feeding Hannibal cookbook. Look how great that looks. Clean that up just a little bit. And there you have it, the completed recipe. I can't wait to sit down and have a bite of this and see how it tastes. It just looks so beautiful on this plate. Don't forget, I've got an unboxing video for this place setting in case you're thinking about getting a place setting for yourself. It's gonna make anyone's table look fantastic. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button. Once I hit 100 subscribers, I can change my URL for my channel to a custom URL, making it easier for other Fannibles to find me and to find this channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Just had my first bite and it's pretty amazeballs. I'm super happy with how this came out. Kind of the business.
He should have hopped faster.
Yes, he should have. But fortunately for us, he did not.